one of these days I hope that a fine young new preacher will come in our midst. Her name is Nutmeg. Nutmeg is my little 7-pound Shih Tzu. Prior to Nutmeg, both Rascal and Spencer have preached several times in churches I have served. And they include me, thankfully, but I am essential for translation. I speak dog better than, well, whatever. But today, it's not Nutmeg preaching, but a dilemma that she experienced. It was a very small dilemma that totally mastered her. Now that's her between the two shoes at about 7 weeks. And those of you who've seen her since know that she's a little lighter in color these days, but originally her name seemed quite apt, as her coloring was that dark German chocolate cake brown. And you can see that she was small, inexperienced, had no idea that going nose to nose with a Great Dane may or may not be a good plan. Her other friend was a pit bull. But Nutmeg, well, just like all of us, comes into life with a certain set of capacities, adds to them as she goes, and the first time around with anything is completely baffling, and she is completely powerless to cope with whatever presents itself. And as I said, it was a very small problem, but it completely baffled and tormented her. More about that later. The psalm today was talking about, well, how we might seek peace. And how we might seek peace was reinforced in the scripture. Don't lie. Do all of these normal, honest pursuits, and peace will come your way. I have a favorite prayer for peace, and we'll consider that prayer today because, well, peace eludes all of us from time to time. And when it eludes us, how do we find it again? Well, I'm suggesting we turn to God. But in turning to God, well, what do we have to say? What's on our minds as we turn to God? My favorite prayer is this one right here, when I need peace. Because I love the word. First off, I'm seeking not just peace. I can be at peace on conscience, but I don't necessarily have serenity. So I like the precision that it begins with. We go straight to God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Now, most of us who ever heard this prayer learned it and associated it with AA. But AA adopted it because it worked for them. It wasn't written by somebody in AA who had come through AA or even knew anything about AA. It is older, not a lot older, but older than AA. And I think it got adopted because it pursues that thing which is most essential to somebody who is trying to tunnel their way or fight their way or simply calmly allow God to carry them out of addiction. But we've only learned the first 4 lines. This is actually a longer prayer. there is more. It's a wonderful bit of more. And we have actually prayed the entire prayer at times in our worship in the past. I put it in, and sometimes I put it in confession during the worship, sometimes in prayer, sometimes in scripture. Well, we have prayed the entire prayer, and the prayer goes on, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking as God did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that God will make all things right if I surrender to God's will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy forever, with God forever next. So there's our whole basic prayer, from God granting the serenity to with God forever and next. And it's a pathway to peace. It's not the only one, obviously, but it's a good one. It's one where we learn. And, well, how does it work? If it's a pathway, how does it work? And I think to find out how it works, we'll just take it a few lines at a time and wander through it today. We start off with the part that most everybody has heard, and several of us know by heart. And let's figure out what we need to do in that part. We need to honestly separate what we can do from what we honestly can hope to achieve. And I think the most important part there is to note the condition that we are placing on our pursuit. The whole pursuit has to work in honesty. If we aren't being honest with ourselves or our God in what we present, what we're giving up, we're not going to find serenity, because serenity comes through that honest separation. There are things that God asks us to do. There are things that are beyond our reach. We have been told, perhaps when we were little, perhaps when we're grown up, or perhaps by our culture, that we can expect of ourselves that we can do anything if we just have enough willpower, if we just put our minds to it. Well, that's not true. We can't do anything. If anybody isn't too sure about that, just pop wings and fly into the balcony. No, you may not use the stairs. Enough willpower? Come on. No. There are things we cannot do. There are things we cannot do even without wings. Even if we don't expect ourselves to have wings. So we do an honest separation. Why is it important to do that honest separation? It's because if we think we should be able to, and we cannot, the net result is we will experience shame. After all, if you're up to it, if somebody says, you can do this, and you can't, what's the net result? If you believe them, you will believe that you are a failure, that you are insufficient, that you are wrong, bad, stupid, and it just degenerates from there. If you are locked into shame, if you are a human being, the average response to shame is to flee from it. Internally, externally, if I am deep in shame, I am going to try and put some distance on. I like to liken shame as being chased by bees. You ever been chased by bees? I once ran into a Nevada. I was just walking outside back behind the church office, and there was on this little bitty tree, smaller than that flag, a thing about the size of 2 basketballs. And I thought, what in the world? And I got closer, and it was moving. Now, fortunately, I knew enough about bees to not want to be chased by them, so I simply backed up, went inside, and got the beastie control network of the county to come out and take them on. That was good. But all of us, even if we haven't actually been chased by bees, know enough not to meddle with them. Now, I do remember as a very young man, in my neighborhood it was popular to go catch bees. And there was this one hedge where you could count on them being. We would all go out there with our jars, and we would, you know, pop the lid on them, and then we would have a bee for a little while. It was standard practice to release, by the way. But every now and then, if you miss, you get chased by at least one bee, or stung, or whatever. So I know just a little about being chased by bees, and I know that one thing happened. If you missed, you ran. You ran as fast as you can. And there was this one guy 2 houses down from the hedge, and he was absolutely compulsive about his lawn. Every spring you would find that he had ordered in new little discs of new lawn, and he would be out there in his lawn with this special tool that would cut a round hole in it, and then he'd pop that out and he'd put in the new disc, and he'd carefully water it every year. This was the lawn not to run across. If you needed to go from my house down to Bernie Beebe House's house, you went either down to the front sidewalk and across, or out back to the alley and across, because you did not go across Mr. Edder's lawn. Do you think we cared when the bees were absent? I assure you we did not care. It was flight. And that is normal human reaction, and I think shame is much the same. When shame comes knocking on our door, we don't care whose lawn we run across. We don't care what we got to do. We're in the business of escaping. It's a little like going nuts. We indulge all manner of things to escape shame. Sometimes shame can be cooled by a large dish of ice cream. 3 works better. Sometimes shame can be obliterated by a round of sex. Sometimes you can be put to sleep with drugs. There's all these crazy things that we can do that get us disconnected when we are staring shame in the face. It's a lot like being chased by bees. If we're seeking peace, then doing an honest differentiation between what we can do and what we can't do is essential. Because if we think we can do it when we can't, shame is coming our way. And if shame comes our way, our madness follows. Our insanity, our indulgence follows. Well, now we move into the part of the prayer that we don't all know. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time. Who's the little green guy? You remember him? Yoda? He's teaching Luke about the ways of the Force. In the previous movie, telling Luke again and again and again that you need serenity to function as a Jedi. It just doesn't work to be reacting to the world, to be doing things in response to what others do. Yoda is saying you've got to be being on the goal. It all has to flow out of serenity. It all has to flow out of harmony. It all has to flow out of the good side of the force. Well, Yoda recognizes, and I think any of us who went to the movie probably resonate with the notion that if you're thinking about a future, or if you're regurgitating a past, you are not in the present. And usually if you're daydreaming about a future, you have readjusted it. Most of us, when we think about the future, don't merely project what we have today forward. Most of us, when we're daydreaming about a future, are tweaking it a little bit. Yes, my kids are going to get their act together. Yeah, I'll finally tame this impulse in myself that is so self-destructive. We tweak our future instead of merely project forward where we are, because this is the way to escape shame. We tell ourselves that it's going to be better someday, somehow. I haven't quite figured that out, but it will be. Or we reminisce about the past. We regurgitate the past. Yeah, when I was a kid, 15 cents to buy an ice cream cone at the Dairyette. Not like today, everything costs too much. I remember my dad once said, you know, I'm starting to believe that I might die a millionaire. But a loaf of bread's going to cost 10,000 bucks. The whole business of being out of sync with now is dangerous to peace. It's a way of escaping shame. The path to peace I'm identifying today, the prayer, is includes accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. 9 out of 10 times, we all know that we want to do it the easy way. I remember something I learned in the Army. If you want to figure out the easiest way to do something, get the laziest guy in the outfit to do it and watch how it's done. You will learn the shortest path between 2 points by tapping into that human capacity to do it the easiest way possible. So we tend to make choices on the basis of what is easiest. But again, we started this prayer with an honest, not an easiest sort between what is in our reach and what is out of our reach. So our basis is honesty, not easiest. And yet, easiest is the most common way to go. Now, it's not the only way to go. I would note that more than a few of us have had it identified to us that the hard way is the only right way. Now, I want to make sure that we are all secure in the knowledge that doing it the hard way is simply the flip side of doing it the easy way. Doing it the hard way isn't necessarily doing it the honest way either. There are some people whose experience of life is so consistently difficult that they just have talked themselves into the notion that always doing it the hard way will always be doing it the right way. doing the path to peace involves the honest sort between what I can do and what I can't going forward. So it's not always about doing it the hard way. It says accepting hardship. So if you plot out the path to peace and it passes through hardship, then don't freak out. Accept the hardship. Do it the hard way if that's the way the path leads. But don't necessarily route yourself through the hard way, because you know it might be that the distance between where you are and where you want to go to find more peace is a straight line, and hardship is up here, and you have to actually reroute. If you always seek hardship as your pathway to peace. So it says accept hardship, it doesn't say prefer hardship. We're not called to do everything the hard way. Moving on in prayer. Taking as God did in the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Well, we're thinking, wait a minute, God doesn't accept this world the way it is. Well, actually, yes. If you have any kind of notion of the incarnation, you have to believe that Jesus turned up, and probably the first thing he experienced after being born was something like, what is this air stuff? Followed by, I'm cold. What do you think the chances are that Jesus was cold on his first night in Bethlehem? I think the chances are pretty good. And when Jesus ran with his friends and fell down, do you think he skinned his knee? Or do you think the angels bore him up? I think he skinned his knee. Because I know that when they came along with some nails and the whip and the crown of thorns, all of those things did to him the same things that it would do to any one of us. I would say that's taking the world as it is. I would say that whole business of being captured in the night without having done anything wrong. Indeed, one of the things Jesus reminds his captors of is how he was teaching in the temple every day, and now you come to me at night in the garden. What do you guys think you're doing? So, yes, God does take the world as it is. Any one of you who's ever been hit with something hard, did that turn into a marshmallow or a Nerf just before it made connection? No. We've all taken the world as it is. The world has dished up. Now, this introduces an interesting notion. If God can take the hard knocks, maybe we can too. Who'd have thought? It's possible to recognize that if God deals with the world as it is, not settling, not embracing the world as it is, but accepting the world is the way the world is, then, once again, we can live it today. If we just rage against the today, or if we get all apathetic, we have a problem. But if we accept the world as it is, then we can live now. And by the way, when do we need that serenity? Now. This doesn't pray for serenity tomorrow. It doesn't pray for serenity last night. It prays for serenity now. So you got to be able to live with now. So you can't rage against the way the world is now and have serenity. You can't even collapse in the face of how the world is now and accept serenity. It's not that we aren't to do things that make the world better, but we are to do things that make the world better from the starting point of now. Trusting that trust God. That's not what I've been taught. I have not been taught to trust God. I have been taught to trust myself by everything from Marlboro commercials to my higher education to my morning routine. I trust in anything but God. And you know, maybe at first blush, that's not so bad. There's a lot of things that we are responsible for ourselves. We circle way back to what can we do, what can't we do. This particular phrase here about trusting God is a listing specific to what we can't do. What we can do, yes, we should do. What we can't do is stuff that we trust God for. We trust God for it even when we don't like the outcome. Maybe even especially when we see the outcome coming and we're not too happy about it. We trust God for it instead of this business of, oh, God forbid this should happen. God forbid that should happen. Well, we're mortal kids. How do you think that's going to turn out for us? We need to trust God even for that greatest of all tests. And then, that I may be reasonably happy in this life, supremely happy with God forever in the next. Is there any message anywhere in this culture that says that reasonably happy is a good idea? Is a great ultimate goal for the entire span of this life reasonably happy? No. We're all supposed to be deliriously happy all the time. Feel any pain, we got a pill for that. Feel pain chronically, we got pills for that. Those pills don't work, we got pills that make those pills even better. This is the business of our culture. Make us insecure about where we are and what we're doing so that we can sell you the product that will take you the rest of the way. And whether it's cocaine or a nice legal beer or that purse we can't possibly justify affording or that car that we want to be seen inside of as we go down the road. We want to be deliriously happy all the time. And everybody who sells anything kind of wants to associate what they've got with what you might have if you just walk over it. So, let us be rethinking the possibility that reasonably happy is a good way to go. Because deliriously happy, that pursuit in this life ends with no peace. And then there's the consideration of supremely happy in the next. Well, look, if there is a God, I think supremely happy is in reach. If there isn't a God, I'm not sure why you're saying a prayer. Try that. So our recipe for peace plays out like this. Know your capacity, honestly. Know what you can and can't expect of yourselves. Know that if you can't expect it of yourself, you should not be ashamed of yourself, because that shame will drive you to all sorts of difficult ends. Live in the present. Living outside the present. It's not like you can't have goals. It's not like you can't have memories. But live here in the present. Choose paths without regard to their difficulty. It's not that we are supposed to seek hardship as the pathway to peace, or seek easy. We're supposed to go the right direction without regard to whether it's hard or easy, and if it passes through hard, so be it. Work with the world as you find it. Jesus did. Trust God when peace is out of reach. Settle for reasonably happy instead of deliriously happy. And anticipate, if you wish, supremely happy forever in the next. There's a path to peace. It's a path that is outlined in the prayer, but there is a path for peace. So, what happened to Nutmeg? She went to Death Valley. She had a wonderful time. You see her frolicking, running around, digging in the sand. Anybody who knows anything about deserts will tell you they are not dead. There's lots of things alive in the desert. And one of the things alive in the desert sands down at Death Valley are little tiny fleas. I said she had a very small problem. Yes, you could hardly see them. But they utterly tormented and befuddled her. She was getting bit. She was doing flips. Couldn't find what just did that. You know, she's kind of used to, if I get nipped, it's because there is something there that nipped me. And she's scratching and she's flipping around, and she had no hope of delivering herself from this very small problem. So what happened? She turned to someone greater than herself. Shelby, with a bottle of flea shampoo, and she was delivered. It's no different for any of us. Sometimes the things that torment us, that take away all of our peace, is flea-sized. Sometimes it's huge. You know, if that pit bull that she had for a friend ever changed his mind about her, that would be a whole different problem. But for Shelby and I, the problem was the size of the flea. The solution was as easy as a good shampoo. What do you suppose God's perspective is on our problems? The things that rob us of our serenity. The things that completely befuddle us, completely elude our capacity to rid ourselves of them. Well, some of them are pit bulls, sure enough. And all the more reason to trust only God for them. But some of them are just too small and too far outside of our experience for us to deliver ourselves. Either way, if we do that honest sort about what I can do and what I can't do, I need to figure out, I am in the grasp of something that I cannot deliver myself from. What is my only alternative? Turn to God. Turn to God for that which eludes us. And find in God a deliverer of everything from the size of a flea to a pit bull on a nutmeg sort of scale. God is the one from whom we achieve peace. Because there's lots of things in the world bigger than us that we cannot deliver ourselves from. Let us all learn to turn to God.